So we're here on Daf Kuf Hey, and we're focusing our attention on Rabbi Akiva's Shita. And the question is, if let's say the Yevamot only did Rekika, that's all she did, would that passel her for Yibum? And the Gemara assumed that according to Rabbi Akiva, lo pasla, but now we have a brisa that seems to perhaps indicate just the opposite. And the brisa is talking about a case where she did chalitza, but she didn't do rekika. She didn't even do kriya. And that's on the top here of Daf Kuf Hey Amid Aleph, below Kara, chalitzasa kshera. B'di'eved, we can be machshir the chalitza, even though there was neither rekika nor kriya. There was just chalitza. She just took off his sandal, his minol. Rokaka. Now we have in the brisa addressing another case where there was just rekika and lo chaltza v'lo kara. Now, rekika alone is not the critical segment of the Maisa Chalitza, and therefore, there's no way that we can be machshir that Chalitza and allow her to marry someone min hashuk. Chalitzasa psula. She's going to need a Chalitza again. Well, it's not really again because there was no Chalitza, but she'll need Chalitza to be mater halashuk. However, she can no longer have yibum because it's a chalitza psula. So it means that rekika alone is sufficient to generate a psul yibum. Then we have the third case of kara. All she did of the three segments was kriya, v'lo rakaka, v'lo chaltza. Ein ka beis mechush. Kriya alone is not an effective chalitza, even on a level of passing her for Yibum. It's garnish garnished, as we would say. Now the Gemara is going to embark on an analysis of who is the author of this brisa. Mani. Ilema Rabbi Eliezer, if you're going to tell me that the author of this brisa is none other than Rabbi Eliezer in our Mishnah, and the brisa says that cholza, v'lo rokov v'lo kara, chalitzasa kshera, that can't be Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer cannot be machshir a chalitza without eureka. For Omar, Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah is committed to the opinion that cholza v'lo yarka chalitzasa psula, and here it says that chalitzasa kshera. In the case of chaltza alone, that's all she did was chalitza, no rekika, no kriya. That's against Rabbi Eliezer, who maintains that eureka is a critical part of the chalitza. In fact, Rabbi Eliezer derives this from the pasuk of kacha ye'asa, darshu ma'isa ma'akiv. Anything that's an integral part of the ma'isa, in this case eureka, is ma'akiv. It's got to be kacha. It's got to be just so. Ela pshita, by process of elimination, we only have one candidate to whom we can attribute the authorship of this price, and that's Rabbi Akiva, who holds in our Mishnah that eureka is not ma'akeves, and cholza v'lo yarka chalitza kshera. Well, that's a problem. Why? Because Ketani, the brisa says that rakaka v'lo cholza v'lo kara chalitzasa psula. Now, let's assume that psula means psula liyibum. She's no longer allowed to have yibum with any of the achim. And again, we're talking about a case of rakaka. That's all she had was rekika, neither chalitza nor kriya. And the Gemara asks ulaman, what does it mean that her chalitza is psula? with Eureka alone. Ilema li'alma, if you're going to tell me that the Bryce is coming to teach us that after Chalitza, then she remains a Shomeres Yavam in the sense that she cannot marry anyone from the Shukli Alma, Pshita, I don't need the Brisa for that. Miyavi Chalitza. Can you even begin to imagine that this Chalitza, which was simply Rekika, would be Mater Holy Alma? That I need the Brisa to tell me that the Chalitza is Psula? El Allah, but rather the Brisa must be telling me that in the case of Eureka, even though she's Asura Linase with Shuk, because this is a Chalitza Psula, but nevertheless it generates a Psul on the Achim. And in order for her to marry someone from the Shuk, she needs Chalitza Kedin. But in any event, it says that Chalitza Psula means Psula Linase L'Shuk and Psula L'Syame. And Shema Minah, therefore, we could derive the conclusion that even according to Rabbi Akiva, Sholchu Lavur de Shmuel, that tradition that was sent to Shmuel that a Yevamot who does Rekika is Tachlots, and the Rabbanan apparently introduced the Gzeira here that people would begin to think that she already had Chalitza, they're going to be Matir a Chalutza for Yibum. So therefore we have to passel her for Yibum, because although she Lamaisa only did Eureka, but people might think that this Eureka followed a Chalitza. They don't know that she didn't do any Chalitza. And therefore, if we would allow her to have Yibum, which according to Torah law, certainly we can, because Eureka is not enough of a Chalitza to say that Yibum becomes prohibited. But if we do so, and people come to the mistaken conclusion that there already was a Chalitza before the Eureka, then we have a serious problem. People who think that you can be Matir Yibum after Chalitza. So the Gemara now raises the obvious question: Rabbi Kiva, Maishno Rekika, Maishno Kriya, was saying the following: that if there was Rekika, then she's Psula L'Syavim. If she has only Kriya, she only read the Psukim of the Parsha there in Kitese of Chalitza, but there was no Chalitza, there was no Eureka. And we said that she's allowed to be Misyavim. According to Rabbi Akiva, neither Kriya nor Eureka are Ma'akiv. Neither of them are critical in order to generate a Chalitza. So there doesn't seem to be any logical difference between Kriya and Eureka. They're both in the same category, in the same boat, so to speak. And therefore, we would say that neither of the two, neither, certainly not Kriya alone, and not even Eureka alone, should passel her, because this Gzeira D'Rabbana. Ella, what? They made a Gzeira, so why they make the Gzeira in Eureka, not in Kriya? And the Gemara answers, Kriya de Isa bein b'tchilu bein b'sof lo michlef aleh. Kriya could take place before the Chalitza or after the Chalitza. The Kriya is Me'en Yevami Lahakim Li'achiv Shem B'Yisrael O'ava Yabni, and that could come after the Chalitza just as well as it can come before the Chalitza. Is therefore Lo Michlefele, those who see that the Yevama did the Kriya of the Psukim of Chalitza, and then she went out and she had Yibum, they're going to just assume that this was the Kriya before the Chalitza. And she never actually did the Chalitza. That's why she was Misyavim. So there's no room for the Gzeira here, because people will realize that there was no Chalitza. But in the case of Rekika is always B'tchila Lesa Basof Isa. It always comes after the Chalitza. And if they see the Eureka and the Rabbanu will allow them to be Misyavim, Michlefele, they'll think that, oh, this Eureka must have followed after a Chalitza, even though there was no Chalitza. but they're going to think that there was chalitza. And michlefalei, they're going to think that in any chalitza, that there was a eureka after the chalitza. Here too, when they see the Yevamot spitting in front of the Yavam, then they're going to assume for sure there was chalitza. And asul mishrei chalutza liachin. And now that we go ahead and we allow them to implement Yibum, they're going to come to the conclusion that even though she got a chalitza, well, give him a second chance to make a better decision than he made on the first round. And therefore, they let him have Yibum, even after the chalitza, because the onlookers think that there was a chalitza before the eureka. Why? Because eureka, by definition, has to take place after the chalitza, not like kriya, which can either proceed or succeed. So now we have a summary here. We can finally conclude that the Sholchu Lavud Shmuel, that with eureka, she has a din of chalitza and not yibum. According to Rabbi Lazar, that's a doraisa halach, because Rabbi Lazar has those two matirim, meaning eureka is an integral, critical part of the chalitza. So Minat Torah, with this eureka, which is one essential part of chalitza, she's asuralis yavim. That's a doraisa halach. Whereas according to Rabbi Akiva, eureka is only ma'akiv the chalitza midrabbanan. And now we have this ksera that after eureka, we cannot allow it to be misyabim because they'll think she had a chalitza before the eureka, and yet we're being allowing them to be misyabim. Ika diamri. Now we have a whole nother lishna basra, I would call it, another tradition of what was sent to Avud Shmuel. Pachi shalchu. This is what was sent to Avud Shmuel. Yevamot sherakaka. There was no chalitza, there was no kriya, there was only a eureka in front of Bezdin, is tachlot v'eino tzricha lorok pam acheres. She'll need chalitza. Yibum is out of the question, but after the chalitza, should there be another eureka? And now again, it's a little bit tricky in the language of the Gemara, because the Gemara says "Eina tzricha," but what it really means is that we're not going to allow her to be yorek pam acheres. If, let's say, she wants to spit a second time after the chalitza, we're not going to allow her to do so. And that we're going to clarify now with this Masechet Shahoy. Ki ahi di'asir l'kami d'Rabbi Ami. Someone came in front of Rabbi Ami for chalitza. Havi Yosef Rabbi Abba bar Mamel kamei. Okay, so there's going to be a du-siach, back and forth between Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Abba. What happened? She came for chalitza in front of Rabbi Ami. Ve'rakaka mekami d'tachlos. Before the chalitza, she already did the eureka. Omalei Rabbi Ami. Rabbi Ami said to her, "Chalotz la ushrile tigra." Shrile tigra means will allow you to get married. In other words, just do chalitza, take the the middle off the regular of the yom, and that's it. And there's not going to be a second eureka. So Rabbi Abba is there, and he turns to Rabbi Abba. He says, "V'abdi'ina and meiruk." I mean, the Yevamot needs to be orek, and it's got to be after the chalitza. We already established before that it's only after the chalitza that there's eureka. So Rabbi Ami says, "Harakakole," meaning that the eureka before the chalitza is valid. So Rabbi Abba immediately asks V'terok, let's have another eureka. Umabakach, what do you lose by it? A second eureka. And then we'll have the seder of chalitza the way it was meant to be. The Torah required chalitza first and then eureka second. All right, you're telling me that the first eureka already registers, but why not a second eureka in order to be mekayim the seder chalitza the way the Torah designed it? What do you lose by another eureka? A couple of drops of spit? Nafik minei churva. Rabbi Ami responds that this is going to be problematic if we require another or allow even for another Eureka. Why? If you allow another Eureka, Amri, what will the spectator think? Rikika kamaisa, lespe mishasha. The first Eureka is meaningless, and that's why they required a substitute, a repeat Eureka. People will say that if a Yevamot did Eureka, then she could still be misyabemis. They don't know that only Eureka alone, even without chalitza, is enough to generate an iser of yibum, meaning to pass on the achim. They're going to think that the Eureka without chalitza is meaningless, and they'll come to be mishrei chalutza liachim, because again, we said that if we'll be mater her after Eureka or yibum to the achim, people will think that that Eureka took place after the chalitza, so they're going to come to be mater chalutza liachim. So Rabbi Abba is not happy with this. How can you tell me that we're going to fall back on the Eureka before chalitza? For Be'ina Kisidram, the Torah requires first chalitza and only afterwards Eureka. Yami says to him, Kisidram lo ma'akfa, the Torah was not makvid that she's going to have to repeat a second performance because she didn't do a Kisidram. And who saw Rabbi Abbas thought that Rabbi Ami was the Chuyika Madchile, that when he said that the Seder is not Ma'akiv, he's just trying to push him away. Nafik v'dok, so therefore Rabbi Abba went out from Rabbi Amma, and he looked into it, the Ashkach, and he found a brisa like Rabbi Ami, the Sanya Bein Shektim Chalitza Rikika, Bein Shektim Rikika Chalitza, Mashas Awesome. And we see that the Seder is not Ma'akiv. Levi, Nafak, L'Kiryasa, he went out to the small villages, Bo Minei, and they asked him, Kidemes, they asked him three questions. Number one, Kidemes Mao Shetachlots. Kidemes Nebuch, she has no arms. Can she bite off the shoe with her teeth? Number two, Yevamot Shirok Kadam. What if instead of spitting saliva, she spat blood? Mao. Can that be a valid Eureka? And the third question was more of a, shall we say, a philosophical question. Daniel was told by a malach in the 10th chapter of Daniel, Avol agidlucha es haroshum b'ksav emes. I'm going to tell you up in Shamayim what was nigzar and was signed by a Kodesh Baruch Hu as a ksav emes. Michlal, apparently, when the malach says, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to reveal to you which is a ksav emes, the ika ksav sheino emes. What's a ksav sheino emes up in Shamayim? Lohavi biyode. Levi didn't have an answer to any of these questions. Also, v'shoyel be'midrash. He comes into the Beis Medrash. Amru le, the Beis Medrash, they tell him one by one answers to all these three questions that stumped Levi. Number one, as far as the Gidemis is concerned, the Torah doesn't add the word biyad. It says v'chol nalo, just get the nal off his foot. And if she can do that with her teeth, that's fine. Number two, if you're asking about her spitting dam, miksiv v'yarka rok, it doesn't say explicitly that she has to spit saliva. And here we're going to discuss, not right now, but a little later on, a principle called efshar ledam belitzich tzuche rok. In other words, there's always mixed in some amount of saliva when she spits out dam. And as far as the third question is concerned, agidlucha harashus harashum b'ksav emes, v'yesh ksav she'eino es lo kash, kan b'ksav din she'yesh imo shvua, v'kan b'ksav din she'ein imo shvua. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu issues a decree and he strengthens it with a shvua, that's already a ksav emes. There's no change possible. But if, on the other hand, there was a gzar din, again, it's a ksav emes, but it's Edim or Shvua. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could be Choser Umevato, and in that sense, it's not an absolute Ksav Emes. Rav Shmuel Bar Ami, Rav Shmuel Bar Ami, Rav Yonasan, Minayin Ligzar Din, She'enim o Shvua, She'eno Miskarea. Sheyeshim o Shvua. Did I say She'enim? I'm sorry. I correct myself. Sheyeshim o Shvua, She'eno Miskarea. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a Gzeira and he strengthens it with a Shvua, he's not going to rip it up. And this is Shednemar, derived from the Parsha of Bnei Eli. Again, exactly what the sin was is a ganze sugi, I think, in Masechet Shabbos. The Tanakh seems to record a very severe immoral behavior, but the Gemara already says that's a toast. That's not really what they did. But they did take that time and bring the carbon of the Oledes, and she had to stay overnight, blah, blah, blah. And God says, Yamutzu Anosh, they will die in their youth. And Shmuel says to Eli, Lachein nishbati lebeis Eli, im yiskaper avon beis Eli bezevach u'minchad olam. There will never be a kapara for the Bnei Eli on their sin, even with a zevach and a mincha. Why? Because this gzeira against the Bnei Eli was strengthened by a shvuah. And a gzardin together with the shvuah is eino miskarei olam. Omar Rabba, now Rabba himself was from the Bnei Eli. Bezevach u'mincha in a miskaper, miskaper u'bedivrei Torah. Through Asek HaTorah, they can achieve kapara. And in fact, the Gemara is going to tell us that Rabbah lived until the age of 40, and the original Gzeira would have had him die. He would have expired at the age of 20. So he's granted another 20 years of life because of his Limud Torah. Abai says no. Forget about Torah right now. Gemilas Chasodim will also be a kapara. So Abai was number one osik b'Torah, and number two Abai was osik for Gemilas Chasodim. So he's going to get an extra 20 years for the Torah, like Rabbi has just established, and a 20 years on top of that for Gemilas Chasodim. And 20, 20, and 20 is 60. Rabba of Abai the base Eli, because they were both descendants of base Eli. Rabba the Asik Torah, he wasn't involved at all in Gemilas Chasodim. They gave him another 20 years for Hoyar Bo and Shana. Chayar Bo and Shana, he lived till the age of 40. Abai the Asik Torah, Ubi Gemilas Chasodim, Hoyashitin Shnin, he lived to the age of 60. They gave him 20 extra years for Torah and 20 extra years for Gemilas Chasodim. So it's interesting, and I think I saw this once in the Chafetz Chaim, that Abaye split his time apparently between Torah and Chesed. And if that be the case, if Abaye would have died at the age of 40 like Rabbah, he would have had half the Torah that Rabbah had. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to give him back the 20 years, which is half of the 40 years of his life, to make up for the 20 years of Torah. I'm sorry, to make up for the 20 years of Chesed, so that he shouldn't lose his Torah as a result of his 20 years of Chesed. So had he lived to 40 and he would have dedicated half that time to Chesed, which is 20 years, so he's missing 20 years of Torah, God gave him an additional 20 years to make up for the 20 years of Chesed. Why is this happening? The members of your household will die young. And now Rav Yochanan adds an eitzah. L'chu ve'isku b'Torah. Go out and study Torah. v'tichyu, and you'll survive, and holchu v'yasku v'torah, v'chayu v'ayukorin also mishpachas Yochanan al shmo, because it was Yochanan who gave them the Eitzah, they called him the mishpacha of Yochanan ben Zakkai. Omar Rav Shmuel bar Unya, Omar Rav Minayin Ligzar Din Shel Tzibur Sheinu Nechtam. What does that mean? Einu Nechtam. Einu Nechtam Aksiv. With regard to the Cheta Egel, which is an avon of the Tzibur, it says Ki Im. This I think is a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, if I'm not mistaken. Ki Im Pechavtzi Beneser V'Sarbilach Boris Nichtav Avonech Lefana. There'll always be a rochem of that sin. There's no takana, even if they'll clean thoroughly, put it through the Chinese laundromat. It doesn't matter. There's the Neser and the Boris is not going to do it, because any time that Klal Yisrael Nebuch will be punished for their sins, there'll be an additional punishment for the Chet HaEgel. How can you now tell me, Eino Nechtam, it's not signed? Ella, but rather what Rav Shmuel Bar Unya had in mind was Minayin Shafilu Nechtam, even if it was signed. Miskareya, Tefillah, and Tshuva could undermine and negate the Gzeira, Shenemar, as it says in Parshas Vaschan of Mi, Hashem Elkeinu B'chol Koravenu Ela, that we're always close to Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu listens to the Tefillah of his Korav Tamid B'chol Eis, even after Chasimas Hadin. So G'Beres V'Aksiv Dirshu Hashem B'Matz'o Karu V'Yosa Karov. Mashma that there's no effective kriya and tefillah elav, except for the time that he's karov. Lo kasha b'yachid ha'betzibur. When we said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not to be found, he's not karov elav tamid, to listen perpetually, constantly to the tefillah, that's b'yachid. But when we said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always listening to the kriya tamid, that's b'tzibur. When are the days that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does find himself close to the chote, even in the case of a yachid, and it's karu b'yoso karov, Rav Nachman Rav Abuva, Elu asar yomim shmein Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. These are the days when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is close to every single Jew, even to the Yechidim, and even the Tzibur, of course, is misorer in these days b'yoser. But this is the Zman that's Mesugal to Tshuva Shlema Shetiskabel Af Likro Gzardino Shel Yoch. Shochu Le'avua Dishmul Yevamot Shelo Cholza Ela Rak Rokaka Dam Tachlots. It means that the chalitza is not a valid chalitza, and she'll need chalitza. No, I'm sorry. There was no chalitza. There was only a rekika of dam. Is tachlots. There's no option of yibum, and therefore we're validating the rekika and the chalitza. Because whenever she spits, and she spits blood, there's going to be some admixture of saliva with the blood. And that's a kiyum of Rekika. Meisvei, now we speak about a zav, and of the various liquids that come out of his body, one of them is rok, and that generates what's called a rishon l'tuma. And we also have a case of dam that came out of his mouth. Okay, now dam is not one of those liquids that convey tumas ziva to make a rishon l'tuma. Another example, u'pi ha'ama. He's got blood never coming out of his organ. Tameh, I might think that you're tameh. Tameh lomer zovo tameh. If he ain't dam ha'yotzim mipiv u'mipi ha'ama tameh elatar. So we see clearly that there's such a thing as dam without rok. Otherwise, it makes no sense that we're excluding dam ha'yotzim mipiv. Lo kasha kan b'motzetzes kan b'shosese. When the chalitza, we said that the dam is a valid rikika, because there's going to be some rogue that's the motzetes. So she's got dam, let's say, between her teeth, and she sucks out the dam and spits it out. There's going to be inevitably some admixture of saliva. But Khan, when the Brisa says there'll be there'll be dam without rog, that's vishoses, when the dam is just flowing down from her mouth, but she's not sucking and spitting it.